Hello, welcome to The BIM Student. I'm your host Chetna Chauhan. If architects design a structure and structural engineers make sure of its structural stability and integrity, it's MEP engineers that make that structure habitable. I mean, just imagine a perfectly designed and engineered building without any HVAC, plumbing, or electrical systems. How would that look like? A beautiful building without any actual use. While talking about digital transformation in AEC, MEP engineers have a very important part to play. The software, the training, the industry standards, the collaboration and coordination protocols, everything needs to be devised to incorporate the holistic view of how we look at our digital construction. And at the same time, they also need to be customized to meet the requirements of each specific discipline. MEP designers and modelers being no different. I believe in this dichotomy of standardization and customization, there must be a balance between the two, especially for MEP engineers and modelers. Let us listen to our guest for today, Laura-Lee Moran, who leads mechanical and electrical BIM in GTA and Southwestern Ontario for WSP Canada. Thank you so much, Laura-Lee, for coming here and sparing some time and talking about MEP consultants, their issues, and their contribution in MEP adoption today. Welcome to the podcast.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
How about introducing yourself to the audience and the people who are listening to this podcast?
Sure. So for those that don't know me, I'm Laura-Lee Moran. I'm currently the BIM Manager for Mechanical and Electrical at WSP in Canada. I've been in the industry probably for about 16 years. I've got an architectural degree, but have had my entire career at an engineering firm. Got into BIM a number of years ago and haven't looked back since.
Oh, that's amazing. What made you choose engineering and MEP especially as something that you would want to excel in?
I kind of landed about it almost accidentally. My first job out of university was at an engineering firm, but they needed somebody with an architectural background to convert PDFs of old buildings into AutoCAD plans so then the engineers could do what they do. And during that process, I'm always trying to find a challenge and learn something new. And when I was finished with those drawings, I'd always see what the engineers would do. I'm like, that's kind of interesting. So I went to my boss and I was like, show me something, just something little. And it kind of went from there. So I started doing markups for RFIs and changes to basically being a PM for some of the mechanical projects. It kind of surprised me a little bit because I had always wanted to be an architect. And then, this soon after school, and I've kind of abandoned that and taken up the engineering design realm. I don't know. It was just something that really interested me.
A lot of us abandoned architecture. You said you started with AutoCAD, from PDF to AutoCAD. How did you get into BIM? You could have been an MEP designer too.
The company I was working for at the time was awarded a project and the client had requested it to be done in Revit. And so basically they're like, okay, we need volunteers. I was like, well, again, I'm up for a challenge. Why not? So I went and sat in, I think it was 4-day training program for Revit. And it was myself and one other person. I was doing the HVAC, she was doing the plumbing, or it could have been vice versa. And we basically struggled significantly through our first project, and that went well, and the client ended up giving us a couple more, and it just kind of went from there. We realized when we started our second and third project that we kind of need a standard. We need something to start from, similar to what we had for AutoCAD. So then that's where I was like, okay, you know what? I want to take a run at creating the company's template, and we're using the same families and content again. Why don't we create a library for that? And it kind of just ran from there. I realized that I really liked that part of it, and for a long time I did both. I did the design and the BIM, and it was difficult and time consuming to do both at some point. And it just got to the point where I was like, you know what, I need to choose. And I really liked BIM. I liked the creative part of it. And then I never really looked back.
Oh, that's great. That is amazing. Coming back to our topic of the day, which is how can we empower our MEP consultants to be a better part of BIM adoption process? Because talk to architects, talk to contractors. They have a lot of things to say, especially about MEP. And I always feel that there is a lot more that we can do to bring them into the process better, but I want to hear it from you.
There's a lot of things that MEP can do. Like there's a lot of challenges in the adoption of it. Content, I find, is a big one. If you don't have enough content or you have content that doesn't really work well together, that could be a drawback. So I use a VV box as an example. You can place that VV box in the model and that's it. If you stop there, there's always a pushback from the managers. Like, you could have done that in AutoCAD and it would have been quicker. Like, why do we have to do this in this new program? Whereas, if you take that and you add to it and you have families that complement each other, you can have that same VV box and it can automatically change size based on the airflow that you associate with it. That air terminal that's downstream, you can have that linked to a schedule, which is further linked to load calculations, et cetera, et cetera. Mm-hmm. So I'm not saying that you need that level of functionality to fully adopt BIM, but having a goal to get to that level would definitely help.
So do you think when an MEP consultant switch from a CAD environment to a BIM environment, there are certainly big chunk of challenges that they have to face, and they are very unique to MEP, like something that architecture structure would not know. Would you like to highlight some of those challenges, and what would your suggestion be to overcome those challenges?
So some of the challenges I find is there's traditionally the modeler, and then there's the engineer, the designer, and there's a bit of disconnect between the two of them. The engineering will do like the calculations and like all of that data and information is completely separate from, say, a Revit model. And then you've got the modelers who could take markups and not really understand like what they're putting into the model. So there's a lot of functionality and like loss of information there. What we're trying to do is bring our engineers into Revit so that we get that functionality and, teaching the designers, say, a little bit more about the engineering side and the engineers a little bit more about the BIM side, so that they work a bit more cohesively in the model.
Mm-hmm. Okay. So do you also mean that MEP designers need to be trained differently in BIM adoption, or like one course of BIM where everybody's together makes sense?
I wouldn't say everybody together because their roles are different. Their knowledge and understanding in BIM and in design are also very differently. So I'm not suggesting that each individual person has their own custom training, but you do need to recognize that there are different levels. There's different background levels. There's different interest, really. So you do have to adopt it maybe based on the role, but also based on their previous experience, to then ultimately get everybody to like the same level standards wise and ideally process wise as well. Okay.
And if there is somebody who has an engineering background and they're used to do all the calculation, engineering, design stuff, and they want to move to BIM modeling part of it, what would you suggest them to, like the path that you would suggest them to take?
Some of the engineers that I've worked with are really afraid of going into the model. They're really afraid of breaking something. And I think that's kind of almost step one. You just need to get over that fear that, nothing is going to happen to the model. But once they're in there, it would just be the same thing as teaching a modeler how to like lay ductwork and place air terminals or light fixtures. You see the element, you know what data needs to go into it. Ideally, like something that we're working towards, having schedules linked with the families so that when you're bringing in that data, you can look at either the schedule or the family they're all linked. So engineers are typically more used to, I guess, looking at the schedules, for example. So if they can insert the data into a schedule, that is going to automatically be pushed to, say, the light fixture or air terminal. Whereas the designer or the modeler might be a little bit more used to seeing the air terminal, but because everything's linked, both are able to insert and manipulate and change any of the data. It's just they're both able to do it in different ways within the same model.
Okay, I get it. If I would say that somebody is coming out of an MEP background and they have to manage the project, which is like, let's say, a design build project, do you think would they be a better BIM manager, or do you think somebody who's coming out of an architecture background, or it doesn't matter?
I don't think it would matter, provided, like, everyone needs to have a little bit of experience with Revit in general. Obviously, if you're dealing with MEP, having an understanding of how some of the MEP functions work would definitely be beneficial. But like for myself, like, I know that there's parts within BIM that I don't understand or I might not be as comfortable with. But if I have a team and I trust that team, and that team combined has all of the knowledge and the capabilities that you'd need to have that final product, the design, completed, then I think that works as well. Okay.
I have seen a lot of professionals now, especially fresh graduates. They would take up a couple of years, let's say, working at a firm, and then maybe take a BIM specialization program. I mean, with all due respect to those BIM specialization programs, do you think these programs are structured to help these young professionals understand that now they don't have to think in the silo of their own discipline, but as a whole? Because a lot of BIM management is actually trying to understand what the other discipline is trying to achieve. Do you think these programs are really designed to do that?
Yes and no. I think the intention is there. And I've seen some of the BIM management programs that some of the colleges around here have, and they're really good programs. But where I find they lack a little bit is the MEP training. So they're very architectural based, which is great. It does provide a very good foundation, but they don't go into nearly enough detail with the MEP side. So you're losing that whole side of the business and not understanding how that works. They do go through some of the programs that I'm a little bit more familiar with clash detection, which is good because that's a key part of the building process, but you still need to understand how those disciplines work. And those programs, from what I've seen, I'm not speaking about all of them, don't have enough of a background or enough training on the MEP side to really give a full picture on the BIM side.
Okay, so this was more like academic part of it. Let's come to more practical part of it. At what stage do you think an MEP consultant should be absolutely involved so that they don't, I mean, I know like we have a BIM execution plan and we get all, everybody, we have a BIM kickoff meetings and all of that. But it's not really till the project is 45% complete in terms of architecture and structure, the MEP really kicks in. Do you think that's a right approach?
I'm not sure if you mean like modeling side of things or design side of things.
Both, the design and the modeling, because I just don't feel like in today's world, if we are working on something and we're doing a BIM process, it is exclusive. A designer needs to know what BIM can achieve, and a modeler needs to understand the intent of designer. And I don't think it's different for any discipline, whether it's architecture or structural or mechanical. I mean, I just feel like it's my personal experience. I feel MEP kicks in really late, but yeah, I'm not the person to comment on it.
No, I agree with you. It's something that I know companies are trying to change because it is hard to jump in that much later into the process. But at the same time, it's not that they're just sitting idle. There is a lot of background, like the calculations and this and that needs to be done before we can actually get to the modeling part. We are trying to utilize the model for more of the calculation side of things. So we're not quite there yet to use Revit, for example, to do the calculations, but there's a lot of data that we can take out of the model to start our calculations. But a lot of times the architectural model is not quite there yet for us to do that, or the design is still in flux. So it's just not practical to do those.
Okay.
But I do know that at least with my team, we are trying to be able to get into that process as soon as possible so that we're not playing catch up. But from what I've seen, almost industry-wide, it is a little bit of a lag in starting the process when it comes to MEP.
Right. No, I've worked on some of those projects where I've coordinated between ASMEP, and it's like MEP should have been in the room at this meeting because we need to listen from them. Yeah, I think we are going there. There is one more thing that it really has intrigued me, which is the LOD part of modeling. There are people who totally favor it, and then there are people who say like, we don't need it. What side of scale would you say, especially for MEP? Do we, first of all, need an LOD matrix to tell us what to design? And then to what extent should we design? Because there is always, and this is what I've heard from contractors, MEP designers model so much that we can't build it and we have to do it again. And that is a lot of waste of time and energy and all of that. So I really want to hear it from you.
Personally, I think an LOD matrix is definitely needed. I've seen proposals and BIM execution plans, and it's just like, yep, LOD 300. It's like, okay, well, what goes into that LOD 300? Because I don't believe that when you say LOD 300 is needed, that every single element that's listed in that matrix has to be at a 300. There could be things that are a little bit less. For example, a lot of times pipes under a certain size or conduit under a certain size, we don't model that because even if it's clashing, it's not one of those that are really going to affect the way that it's installed. I'm sure contractors right now are cringing, but so that would be one area that, we don't need it to be LOD 300. Whereas with major equipment, panels, the things that are really critical or the things that, physically tend to be larger, like boilers, chillers, and things like that. I'm not opposed to having that at a little bit higher LOD, just because they're so critical to the design. Yes, we need an LOD matrix, but does everything have to be of a certain number? No, I think that's the whole point of the LOD matrix, is to kind of outline all the expectations of what you're going to be modeling before you get to the modeling stages so that everyone is on the same page and there's no surprises when you're issuing for construction or permit or anything like that. Okay. We want to move on to our next topic, and which is our impossible questionnaire. All right. I will try my best here. Just don't judge.
No judgments here. The first question that I have for you is, what is the melting point of aluminum?
That is a really good question. And I could quickly Google it, but I won't.
Water boils at 100 degrees Celsius.
Yeah, I feel like aluminum would be like 100 times more than that. We'll knock off a zero, so say 1,000.
1,000 degrees Celsius?
Sure.
Okay. You're quite close. I would say it's 658 degrees Celsius.
Ooh, okay.
Okay, this is an MEP question, and maybe you can answer this. Which pipe fitting may not be used in a vertical drainage system? A cross fitting, a Y fitting, a double Y fitting, a double waist fitting?
Is there an all of the above option?
There is no all of the. There is one.
I would think it's the T or the cross.
Yes.
I think it's the double Y one because I'm picturing it in my head, but I'm trying to think of the name.
Oh, you already answered the question. It's a double cross.
Okay. Yay.
Yay, you got one question right. Coming back to our serious discussion.
Sure.
What do you think is a rose, a bud, and a thorn of including an MEP consultant in a BIM process?
The rows would be, the possibilities are endless. Like there's no real limit to how you can integrate like a BIM consultant into any part of the process. I don't know if that answers that,
but I would say that what is an MEP designer, a BIM empowered MEP designer bringing to a table that a CAD MEP designer won't?
Functionality, consistency, accuracy.
But those are your roses for today.
Oh yeah, definitely.
Yeah. Okay. And what would be your bud, which is a hope for future that we reach here when we are in our BIM adoption process?
Probably building off of the things that I had just listed, but just making everything a little bit more efficient. Like when Revit first came about for me, it was very manual. And then we eventually made it a little bit more automated. And now we've integrated things like Dynamo scripts to do a lot of the different, like adding data to the model, that sort of thing. So I feel like that is just going to continue to evolve. And we may not know what that process is right now, but there's definitely the possibility of going even further beyond where we are right now.
Okay. And what would be your thorn for including MEP consultants, MEP designers into the BIM adoption process?
One challenge that I've seen is getting people to want to get into BIM. And I used to be one of these people. The CAD people that are very stuck in their ways, they're just like, I am very efficient at doing this. And a large challenge that I've had is trying to get people to see that there is a different side of designing something, in that it is BIM, and there's so much more than just, manually putting things in that don't connect to one another, and, having to insert data in 2 or 3 different locations. So it's been a challenge for me to get people to kind of see that and to understand that and to want to move into BIM from using CAD as an example, moving from CAD into BIM. Okay.
My bud for MEP designing into BIM would be, how today temperatures, there are smart thermostats and smart lighting systems and smart systems that can really, sense the people and adjust according to it. I mean, when my MEP design can be efficient enough to that smart designing that my basement is not 5 degrees colder than my top floor, I would be elated.
Pretty sure a lot of people would, yeah. I know I would be. The room I'm in now is either really cold in winter or really warm in the summer. And it's the opposite for every room in the house, so.
Right. Oh, yeah. So a point of time where maybe the HVAC system, like the people who are manufacturing it, they smarten up, or design smartens up. Something has to happen here, and I really believe technology is a key to that. And I might be just hoping for too much right now, but yeah, I mean that's my but when BIM can enable that, when my calculations and design can really regulate what part of building can be made thermally and electrically comfortable for every resident. That would be my pie in the sky for MEP. And I always say that architects and structural designers, they erect the structures, but what makes these structures habitable is the MEP designers. Without them, building is not really habitable.
I agree. I think the saying's form over function. No, function over form. I always get them mixed up.
It's function over form, yes.
Yes.
But like, just imagine we have a building and we don't have an HVAC system in there, a plumbing system in there, an electrical system in there. Like, who wants to live in that? Even if it's one of the most beautiful buildings designed. So thank you for what you guys do for, like, I know it's very underappreciated field, but it does a lot for us being able to live and breathe in the spaces that we have.
It does, yeah. Especially when you can't really see anything that we do because they're all hidden behind walls and in ceiling spaces. But yeah, it's definitely a fun and interesting industry.
Yes, it is. It is. It is. And what would we do without you guys? Yes. Okay. Thank you so much. I've had so much fun in this. I've learned about a lot of new things, and hopefully we have another episode discussing more BIM things and discussing more stuff around BIM. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you for having me. It was a lot of fun.